If you go out and get Cooper Kupp and then you bring in a young wide receiver, even in the second round, and you start to bring him along, you got to remember, and I'm looking at obviously the Chargers Twitter and the pages and the fans talking to me. The Chargers, even with their salary cap, so they have a lot of room in that salary cap. I think top five or something like that. Even with that salary cap being the way it is, this is not a team that is desperate to go out and get big players. You're talking about a couple key pieces that they need to get them over the hump.
Happy New Year and welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast. I'm your host, Dave Helman, and yes, the 2025 NFL League year has officially begun. It opened Wednesday afternoon. Obviously, it feels like the biggest formality in the sports world these days. Free agency started all the way back on Monday morning, and it has not stopped. So much news to get to since the last time we talked to y'all. And I had an assist for today's show. I was joined by none other than three-time All-Pro Chargers legend Shawne Merriman dropped by the show to talk all things in the second and third waves of free agency as we continue to react to the landscape changing at the beginning of this league year. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's talk to Shawne Merriman. 2006 sack leader in the NFL, Chargers legend Shawne Merriman, which I wanted to talk to you because it's a hectic week in the NFL, but it's like double duty for you, man, because not only is stuff popping off in the NFL, but a very busy week for you with this lights out extreme fight happening here in Long Beach this week.
Yeah, man, it's always a little hectic, right? Because when I go and do football media, something come up like a big signing. Myles Garrett signed I think last week for 100 and something million, and everybody wanted to say, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Hey, we got a big fight coming up too, by the way." And we do. We got a big fight in Long Beach, California, lights out extreme fight in 23. We got 12 fights for the night. You can get your tickets at lightsoutaccept.com, and we'll be live on Lights Out Sports TV, which is my network, which is 100% free, and you guys can download it on any smart TV, iOS and Android.
I'm curious. We were talking about this before we fired up. You are an early comer to the MMA scene. We were joking that, you used to work with Jay Glazer. I wish he was here talking with us today. I'm curious, like, from a football perspective too, like MMA has become so popular with the current generation of player. A lot of guys use it to train. You see guys at the big fights every single time they happen. How much fun is it? How much of a benefit is it to you to be able to straddle those two sports and have expertise in both?
I call them my two F's, football and fighting. Right? If I can do those two for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. So I started training. Jay Glazer was the one that introduced me to Randy Couture in 2006. Now I grew up boxing in Prince George's County, Maryland, and my uncles were professional boxers, but MMA was new. So Jay was just like, "Hey, I think you should try MMA out because it'll help you with your hands, being outside linebacker and pass rusher." And he shot me an address. He texted me an address one day, and I showed up in the gym, and Jay Glazer's on my left, and Randy Couture's on my right. And so that was day one for me. And not knowing anything about MMA at the time, I got tossed around a little bit, pummeling with Randy. But again, it taught me so much about balance, leverage, using my hands. And from that point on, I knew that there probably should be more, former and current NFL players that's picking up the sport.
Which, can we go just a little more detail about that? Because again, every offseason and every time I talk to guys, you hear about MMA being used in training. You were talking about the way it helped you as a pass rusher learn how to use your hands. What are the benefits, do you think, and the way that this can apply to being a better football player at, I'm guessing, a variety of different positions as well?
Oh, yeah, just being very violent, active with your hands. Even a wide receiver getting off the line of scrimmage, an offensive lineman or defensive lineman learning how to get off blocks. But I'll tell you, for me, it was a humbling experience because I walked in the gym. I'm 260. I just came off of this big defensive rookie of the year, and I feel strong and youthful. And here we start pumping around with Randy Couture, and he's tossing me around like a 16-year-old kid. Just tossing me back and forth. But then understood what leverage meant. I'm understood what using somebody's body weight against them and kind of feeling the momentum and being able to move. And also endurance. Man, I was gassed after the first 15 minutes, and that we didn't even grapple or get in the ground or do anything yet. I was just gassed. So much that when I left out the gym, I felt defeated. I text Randy Couture the next like 2 hours and said, "What time are you guys going in tomorrow? Because I'm driving back up from San Diego so I could meet you back at the gym because I couldn't stand to not be good at something." But like I said, man, that was one of the biggest reasons why I launched Lights Out Extreme Fighting, and why I'm so passionate about this sport. We have the next up and coming superstars. We want to send these guys, more and more guys to the UFC. And as I said before, we got a big fight March 22nd in Long Beach, California. So if you guys in SoCal, make sure you come to this one. Ashley Thiner, who we just added on this card, who's a complete monster. Arnold Jimenez is on this card as well. And we try to have these next up and coming superstars and send them on their way to the UFC if they got that opportunity.
March 22nd. Absolutely keep an eye out for that as we get closer. All right. So that's coming up right now here today in the football world. I'm recording with you on March 12th. I guess we're an hour and a half away from the quote unquote start of the league year. And I was curious for your perspective on this because you played in the mid 2000s. It was the last CBA before the lockout. It's a hell of a different world, man. Like what's your take on the way free agency has evolved here, where on the first afternoon of the league year, we've done like 90% of the business that's going to get done already. It seems like such a far cry from 05, 06, 07.
Yeah, it almost seems like the NFL is so big during the season and they find a way to rule it during the offseason, right? Like, like right before we got on DeMarcus Lawrence, right? It's just popped up for DeMarcus Lawrence. That's a big name to be moved off of already, kind of beat up roster of the Dallas Cowboys. And, we're just seeing this stuff left and right. I mean, me being in the TV business and production business and creative space now, I would create a whole entire offseason of a show of these moves because it just is captivating. Some of these guys that had great seasons last year that you don't think that was going to move, and you look at them on different rosters, like, man, that guy had put up numbers last year. He had a great year, or he did a lot of good things. Boom, he's gone to another team, right? You don't just see it coming. And I think back when I was playing, this what I believe the difference is. There were already trade rumors of who's going to get cut. I mean, right after the season, you almost knew who was going to be moved at some point, and now you don't. You have no idea of what's going to happen with these NFL rosters, and it's just getting crazy and crazy every year.
This wasn't in my notes, I promise. But and like you said, you brought it up. It happened right before we started recording. DeMarcus Lawrence, 11-year vet, all-pro, accomplished so much with the Cowboys. He gets a new deal with the Seattle Seahawks. And you mentioned Micah Parsons, who, I mean, you can draw a lot of parallels between the two of y'all in terms of the way that you burst onto the scene in the league. And I think there's a lot of angst, understandably so, about the Dallas Cowboys building a contender around Micah Parsons. You've heard him talk about it over the last year or so. When you see this, what do you make of it as a guy that's been in that position? And Micah's going to be in position to sign an enormous contract any day. If you're him, in that position, what do you make of this? What do you make of where the Cowboys are with Micah and with the other talented players on their roster?
Look, if you're him, you got to feel very, very good right now because you see the Myles Garrett deal. In fact, what's the other DNA? I'm drawing a blank that just signed for the Cowboys.
Oh, well, Chauncey Golston left the Cowboys earlier this week. That might have been it.
Yeah, but you see what he signed for, right? I mean,
yeah.
Again, nowhere near this is not a slight to him, but it's nowhere near the caliber of Micah. You look at these big signings, even Josh Sweat, right, who got a big deal out there. If you're Micah, you have to feel good right now because you know that you're going to be somewhere in the top two of everybody getting paid, which you should. Which is why and I got a great relationship with Jerry Jones and the Jones family. It's like I always wanted to get a better picture of how the front office operates and what goes through their mind because when you got a guy like Micah, the only thing that's stopping him from getting a massive contract is injury, right? So you know at that point in time, if you get it done early enough and lock him into a 3, 4, 5 year deal, yes, it's going to be a big number, but it's not going to be the number that he's going to get here this offseason. And he's going to get it, and if I'm him, do you step back on the field? What do at that point? Because you know you deserve it. You've been through multiple defensive coordinators. I think at times he wasn't put in good position, right? He wasn't put in good position, putting his hand in the dirt on one side of the football. I never liked that. I would actually DM him or text him sometime and be like, dude, I feel your pain. Because I hated being on one side of the field or put my hand in the dirt where the offense know where I'm going to line up at. That was like the death of me because if you didn't know where I was lining up at, you don't know what I'm going to do. I like those advantages going to me.
You don't have to give away the context, but I mean, did Micah get back to you? He seems like the active type who would.
Yeah. We talk. I mean, even after he had his big first year, right? I remember this conversation, a great conversation I had with him. I told him that now he's on the map, right? Now he's on the map. Everyone knows who he is. When I say the defensive coordinators are going to go out and game plan him. So he's going to get the slide protection, the fan protection, the chip off the edge, the motions, the tight ends off of the line of scrimmage, hitting him before they get out in the route. He's going to get it all. So it's not the player. He's not playing against an offense. He's not playing against a quarterback or that left or right tackle or tight end anymore. He's playing against coordinators. And this is a great conversation what I had with him because this is what I saw. And I would have offensive coordinators, offensive line coaches come to me before the game and say, Shawne, we don't give a damn who makes a play today. We don't want you to make a play. And they would tell me. I mean, plenty of coordinators and offensive line coaches told me that in the warm-ups when I was playing, and I knew at that point I wasn't playing with the guys, playing against the guys on the field. I was playing against coordinators.
It just dawned on me. My apologies to Oso Digizua. He re-signed with the Cowboys for $80 million. But you're so right. It's going to pale in comparison to the deal that Micah gets. My only question is, and it reminds me of last year with CD Lamb, like he was in line to get a deal. Justin Jefferson set the market, and we go through this whole song and dance all through the offseason and training camp until he finally gets it. I would like to believe the Cowboys can learn a lesson there and get Micah locked up ASAP now that you see the Myles Garrett number. I don't really know that there's any ambiguity there, but I don't trust that to happen based on the Cowboys' track record.
Yeah, and that's what really what I would always love to wrap my head around and understand the way of thinking and when you thinking about that, right? And you can go across several organizations. Why does the Cincinnati Bengals wait this long for Jamar Chase? Could have paid him 2 years ago. You could have got T. Higgins 2 years ago for a fraction of the cost. These guys, players like this, the only thing stopping them from getting massive contracts is injury. So that's the only thing you have to bank on it because they're not going their game is not going to fall off, right? They're not going to have a bad year. Even a little bit of a down year is still a big year for guys like them. So why not go and get it done 2 years early where you're not looking at these massive numbers because you know the market is only going to drive up.
Yeah, it seems like an avoidable problem, and yet more often than not, the Cowboys can't seem to avoid it. I'll give them the credit. DeMarcus Lawrence did just leave for Seattle, but they've been busy on Wednesday. They've been adding to their defense here over the last couple hours. Actually, I believe former Charger Kenneth Murray just signed on with the Cowboys. So we'll see what it all looks like. But if I had to guess, I think that's a very good point that this year, maybe more than any ever, D coordinators are going to be telling Micah Parsons, hey, buddy, you're tripled all day. We don't give a damn about the rest of this defense right now.
Yeah, and that's why you need that strong presence on the opposite side of you, right? You need a 1-2 punch or even sometime a three-headed monster in that defensive pass rushers. But again, if you go and pay one guy like Micah, who is just out of this world with talent and disruptive on the field, you need a couple more guys to take the attention off of him because if you're an offensive coordinator coming out, your whole game plan is just let's stop Micah, that's 30% of what can happen to us on that defense. And these numbers was broken down to me by offensive coordinators and how much they thought that I was going to go out and make that play and why they were running, why they wouldn't run certain counters where it takes a little longer from the backside because they knew that I can shoot and catch somebody before a pulling guard came around. All these things were broken down to me, and I started to understand that I wasn't playing against people on the field, players on the field. I was playing against coordinators.
Playing against scheme, if you will.
Yeah, scheme for sure.
Gonna be interesting to watch. Cowboys, of course, will find a way to stay in the news. If I'm having you on, I want to take the time to make sure we properly highlight a team that definitely doesn't get the amount of shine that it deserves, a team that's near and dear to you. It's been a busy week for the Chargers, and I saw you keeping up with it on social media. Obviously, let's start with the big news because it does feel like a little bit of a changing of the guard. The Chargers managed to hold on to Khalil Mack for at least one more year, but it comes at the cost that Joey Bosa, who, a 9-year veteran, 72 sacks with the Chargers, he's on his way out the door. I understand the financials of it, but it is always surreal when you see a guy like that leave.
Yeah, and we all know it's part of the game. And I think I even tweeted out that, he's a Charger legend. He'll go down as one of the best defensive players to play there on the team and what he meant there and his consistency. And, I remember sitting down when he got drafted. When first, literally the day he came in, and me, him, and John Pagano, who was my former linebacker coach, we were sitting down watching old film of me and some of these schemes and things like that. And I was just asking Joey what he saw here and what he think should happen. And this is young Joey, and he was so locked in and just really focused on the game. And I knew they had a winner. I knew they had somebody they drafted that was going to really go and knock it out the park. But we all know and understand, man. This is when it's time, it's time. And if an organization decision to move on from you is not anything personal, and that's one thing that I always when I talk to guys about that get traded or cut or released or whatever the deal is, most of the time, I'm not saying all, most of the time, it is never personal. It's they are out right now probably looking for somebody too. They got Thule there who is a young, hungry,
absolutely.
He's a good player. They're probably going to, after this year, start looking to bring someone else in to replace Khalil, and Khalil's whole thing, Khalil Mack's whole thing after the last game when he was trying to make a decision on coming back or not, are you coming back with an opportunity to win a championship? That was really the thing. That's why I retired early. I said, look, I've had some injuries. I'm not the player that I was before. I'm not going to get top dollar because of those injuries that happened. So if I wasn't getting an opportunity to go back to a contender, that's it. I don't need anything from this game. And I would have to guess, and I would bet on that Khalil Mack, that played a big part in him making a decision to come back or not. Do these guys have an opportunity to be a contender? And I think he answered that question by signing that 1-year deal and coming back.
Which I do like what they've done. I mean, they retained Khalil. They signed Dante Jackson, underrated cornerback. They bring in Najee Harris on a very sensible deal. He gets to come back out to the West Coast where he's from. Jim Harbaugh is going to utilize a running back like that. I like everything the Chargers have done to this point, but I am curious, as well as a lot of other people, I think, where's this receiver help coming from? Like, is it fair to say it's going to be a draft pick at this point?
You can, yes, I think you still draft no matter what. I don't know if you go out and draft the top. I forgot what they ultimately, like 20-some pick or something like that, maybe, or wherever it is. If you go out and get Cooper Kupp and then you bring in a young wide receiver, even in the second round, and you start to bring him along, you got to remember, and I'm looking at obviously the Chargers Twitter and the pages and the fans talking to me. The Chargers, even with their salary cap, so, they have a lot of room in that salary cap. I think top 5 or something like that. Even with that salary cap being the way it is, this is not a team that is desperate to go out and get big players. You're talking about a couple key pieces that they need to get them over the hump. This team, regardless of what anyone says, was not destined to go to the playoffs. No one talked about them going to the playoffs.
Oh, I'll readily admit it. I did not see them as a playoff team in August. I absolutely did not.
Yeah, and so, if you look at that, everyone said this takes 2 to 3 years to get them back on track and get them into playoff contention. Well, it happened the very next year. because that's what Jim Harbaugh does. That's what his history has done. Every time he's gone to an organizational program, he's done just that, turn things around fast. So if you look at the way this team is built, they don't need to go out and get a top number one wide receiver. They didn't need to go get a Devontae Adams or T. Higgins and pay him 30 million or 40, whatever that number's going to. They don't need that. They really don't. They need a Cooper Kupp, and they need to draft a second or third round wide receiver to come in as a missing piece. No one thought that Lad McConkey was going to come in to have the type of season he had. No one. Not the numbers and the way he performed. So Chargers did, and Chargers fans did because they watched him during the preseason and watched him during camp and everything else. But the outside didn't know how good this kid really was. There are a couple of pieces off. And Najee, I mean, let me tell you, with Jim Harbaugh, like he got to be smiling from ear to ear for what he's going to be able to do with Najee Harris because J.K. Overperformed. You know, I mean, I think what he did after all those injuries and Achilles and knees, the injuries he had, and come back and perform the way he did. I give him more credit and respect because every injury just about that he had, I've had. The Achilles, the knee, and you're never the same. And for him to perform the way J.K. Dobbins did, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But now you get kind of a fresh Najee Harris coming in for $5 or $7 million or whatever he's making on that 1-year deal. Jim Harbaugh has got to be smiling from ear to ear because he's going to pound the rock. He's going to run the ball as much as possible. And now you can spread it around. But I think, somebody like Cooper Kupp coming in there can really, really make some noise for them.
Chargers pick 22nd, which you got to guess is definitely in range for a receiver if they want one. But to your point, I'm not betting against Jim Harbaugh drafting a lineman. Like whatever side of the ball, it doesn't matter. Just draft a guy to add to the lines, beef up your run game or your run defense. That sounds very Harbaugh to me.
Yeah,
I had one last thing for you. I was going to ask you, were you amused at all that Joey Bosa wound up in Buffalo of all places, which is where you wound up after your time with the Chargers?
No, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all because for one, the culture that they have out in Buffalo, they love the guys who love to play football, right? Like a lot of passion, like to get after it. And even if you're older and not the same player that you was, they utilize you in ways that you are good for that locker room. I remember coming out there, everyone knew, including general manager Buddy Nixon, I wasn't the player that I once was. And we had deep and really good conversations where it was like, I need you to go down and teach the rest of these guys how to be a pro. I need you to show them, how to practice, how to not to hang your head after losses, how to take things more serious. And like it was a combination of not just me being on a team, but also what I had to do in the locker room and kind of to show the younger guys and kind of build a foundation, which they have. And so adding Joey Bosa to the mix is exactly what the Bills need.
I was going to say, it almost feels like the opposite where today's Bills are like, hey, Joey, we got the culture. We know exactly how close we are. You just come in here and get a handful of third down sacks and
100%.
We'll be perfect.
Yeah, no question.
I wanted to ask you for your perspective on this because it's something that you play up on the outside, but it's too obvious to notice. Southern California to Buffalo. But look, I mean, you're from the DMV. Joey played his college ball in Ohio. It's not like y'all don't know about cold weather, but after so much time in Southern California, like, is that a big deal or is it not a big deal?
Oh, it's a big deal because you get soft. you get soft. There's no other way to put it. It's now. Let me tell you, it's not the playing in the cold weather. The 3 hours games, even the practices. Sometimes they'll take you in a bubble and they'll open the doors because they want us to get kind of acclimated to the cold, right? So they'll still open the doors even if it's in a bubble, so it's not warm in there. It's living, right? Going up the street, going to the store, grocery store, forgetting something in the car, having to run to a restaurant. It's living there that when it gets brutal. But I'll say this. I never experienced anything like that with fans before in my life. And I remember going downtown and I was eating at this wing spot downtown Buffalo. And a group of people had just walked by. It's my third or fourth day out there. And mind you, it's like blizzard type. It's wet snow out there. And, a couple fans, people walked down and they walked by me and said, hey, what's up, lights? And they kept walking. It was almost like I was surrounded by second and third cousins. That's the love and feel you get when you play out there in Buffalo. And it's I Joey's going to see it, right? He's going to see it. He's going to feel it, and you like it doesn't even feel real. It feels like you're playing in front of family. You take things a little bit more personal because you know how much they care about that team and what that team means to them. So just it's a different feeling, man. We beat the Patriots out there, which by the way I never did when I was with the Chargers. We beat the Patriots out there. Had Tom Brady threw 4 picks, and we finally beat them. It was like it was a scene out of a movie where the town had shut down. You couldn't get anywhere for like a day. It was pretty insane because they hated obviously they hated the
Sure,
Patriots so
yeah.
much out there, and we beat them for the first time I believe in a long time. And but it felt good. Forget the win. It felt good to do that for the fans and to see them react in that kind of way, man. So I'm curious to talk to Joey. Maybe sometime in the middle of the season or whatever I get a hold of him. I'll let him get there and kind of let all of it kick in. And I want to ask him how he felt, when training camp comes and they're lining up against the gate and the horns are beeping every. I mean, it's pretty damn cool to see. So I want to talk to him after he gets out there.
Yeah, let Joey Bosa make a few plays in the first like month of the season and see how that goes. Which, all due respect to, I love Charger fans, but it is not quite the same level of
It's different. Yeah,
intrigue. And yeah, I think I've said it before. I think Buffalo probably got to throw in Green Bay too, but those are like the two cities that it's the closest you can get to a college environment in the NFL. Absolutely.
yeah, no doubt about that.
Wanted to pick your brain mainly, like I said, I mean, here on a Wednesday afternoon, of course, not everything's done. Something else is going to happen here. But the vast majority of the big news happened a long time ago, obviously. Like it gets going on Monday and it doesn't stop. So we covered the Chargers. We talked a little bit about the Cowboys. Is there anybody else in the league that really jumps out to you in terms of you just really love what they did this week?
Um, just we got on with Demarcus Lawrence and going to Seattle. Sam Darnold also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you worry? So I love Sam. I'm happy to see him get the bag. Do you worry at all about everything else Seattle has done? I mean, I raised an eyebrow when I realized that Sam got there just as DK Metcalf left town and Tyler Lockett left town. I love Sam. I'm a little worried about what's around him in Seattle compared to Minnesota.
Yeah. You might have a point. Obviously, you can't replace Justin Jefferson for anybody, for that matter, just about anybody. Maybe a couple guys that you can compare him to in the NFL. But the reason why I like the whole thing with Sam, because for one, I mean, he was kicked to the curb for losing it, in the playoffs, right? After the great year he had, and now everybody's down on him. Like I said, you know what he did for that franchise, and no one expected that out of Sam Darnold. He's already been in multiple teams and haven't really had a real opportunity. I think that he's going to get out there to that Seattle team, and more importantly, because of that division. Whatever the hell's going on with the 49ers right now, I mean, it is ridiculous. I wish they would be more upfront about it being a full rebuild. I just,
It's starting to feel that way, right?
yeah, and I don't know if because this what happens. And maybe this is the reason why they don't want to is because when you tell the older guys, the veterans, guys that stick like the Fred Warners and stuff of the world that you're going to that you're doing a full rebuild, it's very discouraging for the vets because they know they don't have a lot of time to play. But when you get rid of Greenlaw and Debo and get all these major players leaving, you just need to come out and say, "Hey, look, man, we took a shot with our vets, and we want to see where we're at with these younger guys. Brock Purdy's contract is about to be up. He's going to have a bigger deal, and I think you need to be more honest, just upfront, because you got veterans there who don't have a lot of time to play, and so if that's what you're planning on doing, you have to give them an opportunity to trade them, let them go, or do something to get a championship. No one wants to stay there in your rebuilding process, and it's just business.
It's interesting to think like I think that's an excellent point. I also think even after everything that's happened, I still think there's a lot of talent on that roster, right? Like you still have Nick Bosa, you still got Fred Warner, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, like the list goes on and on. I can imagine those guys right now saying, "Hey, we got some young guys. We're going to go through this draft. We'll replenish the roster and we'll be good." And maybe they will be. But if this 2025 season doesn't go well, then I think your Fred Warner and your George Kittle and those guys, all of a sudden you're looking around like, hey, man, I maybe got 1 or 2 years left of my prime. Like I can't afford for this to be, I don't have time to wait around. So maybe you can talk these guys into one more go around. But if that doesn't work, then I think next offseason could be even crazier in San Francisco.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, because then you can actually just the entire roster for the most part. I mean, McCaffrey could be gone and Kittle could be gone. Now you got Brock Purdy there with no weapons, right? And now you're waiting on a draft or waiting to see what happens then. And on the defense side of the ball, let me tell you, and people don't really look at it this way, but guys like myself who played on teams with offenses that can put up points benefited the hell out of me, right? Because we got up 10-0, 14-0, or 14-3. Guess what? That team has to pass. And then what I did, I pinned my ears back and I went back and was going to get the quarterback. But when you're playing from down because your offense can't put up points, you can't move the football, it's a 50-50 shot whether the team is going to run and throw the football. You can't actually go out and pin your ears back and just go play football the way you want to. And so if you're Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, these guys, you really got to start to look at the overall scenario that, okay, well, what if we stick it out for this year? We still need to have somebody in the offense side of the ball outside of McCaffrey who can go out and move the football and put up some points. Because I don't care how great Nick Bosa is. If they're playing from down, no one wants to be in the third and long situation all the time with Nick Bosa breathing down your neck, right? And so it works both ways. And you, as a defensive player, you got to look at these things and say, hey, who do we have on the offense side of the ball that's going to allow me to go out to be the best player that I could be?
How much, I know the answer to this one. How much does it weigh on a defender when you don't trust your offense to score points? And better yet, how quickly does it take you to start to be weighed down by that? Like if you know that your offense doesn't have it, is that something that's getting to you like in the first month of the season, or can you hang on for longer? Like what's that process look like when you are a great defender, a good defense that doesn't necessarily trust their offense?
What we call this, having a good attitude on change of downs, right? Or change of possession. So it's only but so many times you can take that field and say, hey, we got to pick it up because your offense is not playing well today. Every great defense know that sometimes you're going to have to go out there and win games because your offense ain't getting it done. We know that that's the deal. 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, and they're not turning around. It becomes demoralizing for a defense where you're starting to actually lose your own confidence, right? Because it's only been so many times that you're going to start with the football on your side of the field and you're saying, guys, they're not going to score today. Well, they only got 30 yards to score because our offense gave it up again. So it's very demoralizing for a defense to take the field with that same attitude week in and week out, and it just wears on you. Before you know it, now you're just as negative. Your attitude, your body language, your attitude, everything about you is just negative because you know that no matter what you do on the defense side of the football, that you're not winning that game. You're going to be put in bad situations, and that's when the in-house fighting, the finger pointing, somebody going to stick a microphone in your face after the game, and the reports go, hey, what about the offense? It's going to leak out. Hey, they got to get it together. Now you got the back and forth in the locker room. So it's only but so much that a defense, no matter how great they are, can take before something bad happens inside of the locker room.
That actually ties in perfectly to what I was going to say, because the team that I'm super intrigued by is the team that let Sam Darnold go, because the Minnesota Vikings took the money that Sam Darnold would have made. They turned around. They signed 2 starters on the O-line. They brought in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, these 2 great veteran D linemen. They bring back Byron Murphy. This team looks absolutely loaded other than the fact that we've never seen their quarterback in the NFL, JJ McCarthy, which I'd be curious for your perspective. How do you think the guys on that team feel? And I know, I mean, I get the Vikings could still add a veteran quarterback. We'll see. But if it's all hinging on a rookie quarterback, or not a rookie, but you get my point, a guy that hasn't
Well,
played.
technically, he hasn't been on the field.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Because that's the only thing that I can see that would hold this team back.
Well, I think they're telling you exactly by all the other moves that they made on how they feel, right? They don't know. If you knew 100% that you had a guy that's going, a quarterback at the quarterback position, you had a guy that's going to go out there and give you 20-something points a game on a daily basis, and you know that he's going to put up points, you don't make all those other moves. Because as the NFL has shifted over these last several years, all the weight is on the quarterback position, all of it. And we've seen all the years that Aaron Rodgers went without a number one wide receiver in Green Bay. Like the great quarterbacks, they will stick you with nobody sometimes. They will not give you a lot around you because they know that you can overcome whatever deficit that you have on that team. They're with all those other signings that they did is, to me, is basically saying that we don't know, but we're going to give you enough ammo around you that if you're not the quarterback we think you are, we're going to be okay. So you can go out there, be an average or above average quarterback, and we can still win some football games, and we'll make a decision after this. But because we're giving you so many things put around you, so much talent on both the offensive line and defensive line and defense in general, we want to have reassurance that if you're not the player we think you are, we're going to be okay no matter what.
What sounds more appealing to you personally? Loading up around JJ McCarthy and hoping that he's the guy and trying to put him in a position to succeed? Or would you be interested in a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming to Minnesota and trying to guide that team somewhere?
Well, first off, man, I love Aaron Rodgers to death. We came out in the same year, but he has to make a decision like that. It has to, you know, he has to make a decision for these organizations, for these coaches to figure out what the pieces look like. I know that in his head, he probably doesn't need it anymore, regardless of what anybody thinks. He didn't. Obviously, I watched this Netflix documentary. He really doesn't care what a whole lot of people think, which is cool. But when you're talking about a guy like Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I would bring him in a second. And what I've also seen Aaron Rodgers do, we've all seen it, is that he has no problem passing the torch. He has no problem helping out. We've already seen it with Jordan Love. We've seen it with Zach, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen him do it. So I don't think that would be a bad move if he went to Minnesota. And tell you the truth, I'm sure he wouldn't mind landing up against Green Bay, being in that division twice a year. It would be a nice in how he operates. I'm sure that would be a nice jab at them to face him twice a year, even at 41 years old.
The symmetry of him doing it after Brett Favre did the same thing, after stopping at the New York Jets as well, is just, it's too entertaining to turn down. Like, selfishly, I'm kind of hoping that's what happens with Aaron, but you're right. I mean, I read a report right before we came on that said, it could be weeks before Rodgers makes a decision. I wonder, at his age, how many teams are going to be willing to wait that long on a decision. I feel like it's got to be something that happens sooner rather than later. I mean, obviously not, because it is Aaron Rodgers you're talking about.
Yeah, I think ultimately, first of all, I believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and have a better year than he did last. That what people don't understand about that Achilles injury, which I popped mine pretty good. It takes a full year, right, for you to feel 100%. And when you get older, when you're 40 plus years old, it takes a little bit longer than that to get back. So that means when he tore his Achilles, he probably didn't have a full offseason, like where he felt comfortable. It was times that, I was working out during the offseason. I stepped wrong. I pushed off the wrong way. Even when it was back healthy, I still had a little bit of back in my mind that I could pop it again. So it was almost like that mental battle that, hey, you're back. You're strong again. You're fine. You can do it. But that took some time. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a better year than he did last. Now, the flip side of that is he's still Aaron Rodgers, and so somebody's going to pick him up. He's always going to have an option because no matter where he goes, he's not going to be the guy, right? He's going to be someone there who's a veteran that if you need him to go out and perform, he can, but he's not Aaron Rodgers of 7 years ago. So no one's looking at him like that. So no matter what, you would like for him to make that decision quicker because, teams got to get on with their offseason and their game plans and their roster. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he's Aaron Rodgers. He can still play. He's going to be on somebody's team to start a training camp no matter when he goes. So the hurry on his side, if you're looking at it from how he's looking at things, there's no rush, right? Teams don't like it. Fans probably won't like it. But ultimately, if you're looking at it from his point of view, he has no hurry.
I get your point, and I guess when you put it that way, you're right. And with all due respect to, there's a lot of good players that are still sitting out there, but I think that is the big remaining domino when you talk about where he signs is going to influence a lot of things. It's going to influence which teams feel like they need a quarterback in the draft. It's going to change how teams view their plan for this year, depending on whether or not they get him. So you're right. He doesn't have to hurry, but I feel like the entire NFL world is going to be tapping their watch until he figures out what he wants to do.
Well, one thing we know about Aaron Rodgers by this point, he don't care, right? It's just,
yes,
he's a different cat. Yeah, he's a different cat where he doesn't feel under the pressures of the world's outlook on him or anything he does. And so I don't, some people can tap their watch to tap dance and jump up and down and scream all they want. I just don't think that he really cares at this point of his life.
No, I'd have to say I think you're right. I guess just selfishly, I'm looking forward to seeing what it is. We'll see. The way this goes, Shawne, is as soon as we're done recording this, we'll find it. We'll find out. We will, I'll open my phone in 10 minutes to the news. But until then, man, I'll let you go. This was a ton of fun. Next time, we'll have to get Jay Glazer on to talk a little shop with us. I think, we could get like a multi-way call. I think that would be fantastic.
Well, he's going to try to take everything over like he always does. So hopefully we can get some words in.
You said that. I didn't say that. You said that. All right, Shawne Merriman, this was a lot of fun, man. Best of luck with your fight. I'm looking forward to it. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Got it, man. Thanks for having me on.
This episode of the NFL on Fox podcast is brought to you by Daiya Pizza, featuring dairy-free cheese made with the innovative Daiya Oat Cream Blend. Let's talk about game day snacks. Pizza is a must, but if you've ever doubted that a dairy-free option could match up, Daiya is here to change your mind. Thanks to their Daiya Oat Cream Blend, you can get all the creamy, melty goodness that stretches and melts just like dairy with a rich, savory taste that perfectly complements every bite without any of the dairy. Their thin, crispy crust is the foundation for bold, savory toppings, and the standout? Their cheese, made with Daiya Oat Cream Blend. It's rich, stretchy, and melts just like dairy cheese. So whether you're hosting a big watch party or keeping it low-key with family, Daiya makes it easy to enjoy dairy-free eating while delivering everything you love about pizza. No commitment to dairy-free eating is required. Daiya pizzas are designed for everyone to enjoy. Make your next pizza night or game day spread FOMO-free. That's fear of missing dairy. Visit DaiyaFoods.com to learn more or grab Daiya Pizza at major retailers like Whole Foods, Kroger, or Walmart. Check them out on Instagram or TikTok for even more inspiration. All right, that's it for us for the week. Thanks one more time to Shawne Merriman for hopping on, and thank you to y'all for keeping up with us during this free agency frenzy. We will be back on the other side of the weekend. Whatever other news comes our way on the free agency front, plenty of news to get into on the other side of things, taking a closer look at the 2025 NFL Draft. We got a lot to talk about, so if you're not, make sure you're subscribed. Go find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods, you can find us there. You can also find us on YouTube, the NFL on Fox YouTube channel. However you prefer to find us, we will be there. We will talk to y'all on Tuesday. Until then, thanks as always. I appreciate it so much, and I will chat with you soon.